disrupt our infrastructure in some way or steal money to fund their operations. And then the fourth category is just the individuals. A 14-year-old boy in Shanghai that wants to steal the PlayStation software from Sony. I mean, and there are plenty of these individual hackers all around the world that are very, very sharp in learning how to work the internet and hack into other people's property.
I've often said that if the people who are hackers could put their talents and their ingenuity to the work that would be best for one and all, I could understand it. But they are deliberately trying to screw things up.
Yes. And we learned from the centrifuges in Iran how these there are various kinds of malware. What was used there was called a worm. It's a form of malware that can cause infrastructure to operate and malfunction, and so that's a worrisome part of potential attacks here on things like our power grid or our clean water system or our financial system or others. So that's a worrisome form of malware.
You see, I personally believe that the next wave of terrorism is going to be electronic terrorism. That here we've got Homeland Security and the intelligence agencies working on the agent instead of the electronic capabilities of the agent, who they don't have to be in the United States to cause all this havoc. Just imagine if there was an electronic or cyber attack on Wall Street.
Yes, and it would just totally destroy investor confidence. Would be really devastating. But you're absolutely right, and as I said earlier, that we're only in the first inning of this ball game. If you think downstream at how these attacks can replicate, it's a pretty worrisome thing. And I know it's a top priority in our military. 2 years ago, the U.S. set up a new agency called the U.S. Cyber Command, Cybercom. But that was only 2 years ago, and they're still staffing up. Its purpose is to defend against attacks on our military command, control, and communication system. And you can see how that would be pretty bad, too, if they were able to disrupt that.
Well, just imagine if the terrorist or the agents who are against the United States and the Allies were to get a control of a drone or any of these highly intelligent and sophisticated weapons that we now have. It would be disastrous.
It is really worrisome, yes. It's moved up to be a high priority. All the branches of the military have cyber operation units now. As we talked about, the NSA, it's one of their top programs. The CIA, a top program. Companies are getting more into it. There is a computer security conference going on in San Francisco right now. Has 350 companies attending it. So it's up people's priority system, but we have a long way to go to create something that is bulletproof.
Yeah, something like a net to protect the net.
Yeah, and I don't think, to kind of the tagline on this thing, I don't think it's going to be a massive attack. I think what we're going to experience in future years is isolated incidences of different kinds of attacks, and they will gradually increase in volume. But there won't be one huge coordinated attack.
No, that would make no sense because they couldn't cause the havoc and chaos that these sporadic attacks can.
Yeah.
Keeping your opponent off balance. The what-if factor, we don't have to worry about, in my opinion, pipe bombs any longer or dirty bombs. We have to worry about the cyber attacks.
That's right.
You know, even law enforcement agencies. I know the RCMP here in Canada have a cyber investigation unit. The Ontario Provincial Police, our Hamilton Police Services also have cyber divisions, because, you know, whether it's a laptop, whether it's an iPad, whether it's any of these handheld devices, if they can transmit as well as receive, this is a potential weapon when it comes to cyber attacks.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And you know, you also raised the point in our friendly neighbor, the Canadians, that this is not just a U.S.-centric problem. This is a worldwide problem. The European Union has elevated this and is trying to mobilize their efforts for defense against it as well.
There are many people who are dead against Big Brother knowing everything. But I'll tell you something, Charles. I would rather have Big Brother knowing everything that's going on than the guy across the street or across the pond or any of the countries that are not friendly towards Canada, the United States, Great Britain, and our allies. People say, well,
Big Brother may speak Mandarin or Farsi or Russian.
Well, you know, I understand this, but people are paranoid that the government,
yes,
when it comes to the CIA, the NSA, and the other intelligence gathering agencies that we don't know that exist but really do exist, that they have too much power, that the information is not for them to know. My concern is, well, if you're worried about Big Brother having too much access to the information, how are we going to catch the bad guys?
Yeah. Well, it's natural for people to worry about this, but I would say that the professional people in the CIA and NSA have our very best interests at heart. They are true professionals. They are among the best and brightest, even though it's secretive. But they are not driven by political objectives. They are driven by mission-centric objectives.
And they are very patriotic people.
Yes, they are.
Very, and hats off to them for the wonderful work that they do. And when it comes to the, I'd just like to go back to your book for a moment, because I've read a couple of excerpts, and I understand that readers are comparing Provocateur to movies like The Thomas Crown Affair for its suspense and its cleverness, and Body Heat for its sexual tension. Did either of those influence the book at all?
Well, it's interesting. You know, The Thomas Crown Affair was a movie, of course, and a movie that I really loved for what it did, although in the end it was the man that was the one that was the hero. And this, you know, it's a very superior female that does it. But oddly, I'm a strange sort of writer of fiction, because I've never read fiction. I have written a great deal of nonfiction all my life, so I'm a very good writer, but I've never read fiction, and this is my first novel, my first effort into fiction.
Yeah. Over the years, talking to the number of guests that I have, when it comes to authors who write in fiction, they have a message that they put into a fictitious title,
context,
because it's easier to get that message across to the reader than if they were to put it in any other form.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I seek not only to entertain, but also to enlighten the reader. And certainly part of it is creating a higher degree of awareness of the threat of cyber attacks and where that fits in our world in the future. But another one is very much at a personal level. I think one of the most interesting aspects of the human experience is kind of the subtle contest between men and women. men want to have their way with women, and women want to have their way with men. And I love to write about that dynamic, and that's really a very core element in what goes on in Provocateur.
We talked about overseas organized crime families, the Russian mafia, and even Al Qaeda. But that opens up a whole new aspect of the criminal element as well within the boundaries. The mafia, organized crime, using cyber attacks instead of machine guns.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of a scary thing. And we've got to get our act together because it's coming.
What do you think the government should do immediately to start to put this cyber attack into the priority that it so urgently deserves, and that is being right on top of the pile?
Yeah. Well, I think going back to Obama's message, it was all about causing companies to disclose when they had cyber attacks, and I don't think that is much of the key. Certainly information sharing is helpful on it, but there needs to be a lot more investment in technology. This is a technology war, and the person that has, the entity that has the strongest technology hand is going to definitely be advantaged. And so there are these pockets of skill developing in the private enterprise world, and some of these security companies are doing great work in that area. But also, as we talked about, the NSA, CIA, branches of the military, U.S. Cybercom, all these need to be, if there's any funding we give, those are not areas to cut. And it's a war where you need to get your advantage by growing your technology.
Speaking about budget cuts, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens if all the budget cuts that the media are reporting on, that will be occurring very shortly if this budget isn't passed. And scary times. You and I have to take a commercial break. We'll chat briefly about this when we come back from this commercial break. Exonation. Charles D. Martin is my special guest. He's the author of Provocateur. His website is www.provocateurs.book.com. And Charles and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away, and like Maria Muldaur says, put your camel to bed.
Send your camel to bed. Shadows painting our faces, traces of romance in our heads.
With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com.